Right now, you are living inside a projection. Not in a metaphorical sense, not as some spiritual poetry, but actually inside it. And here's the shift that changes everything. Ancient wisdom keepers, like Tibetan masters and the sages of India, understood this truth long before contemporary science had the tools to validate it. These ancient traditions didn't just theorize about the nature of reality, they lived it. They developed specific techniques for engaging with the deeper layers of reality, for transitioning from passive witnesses of this projection to active generators of it. Millennia before we split atoms or mapped neural networks, these sages accessed something profound, a deeper understanding of existence, something that modern quantum physics is just beginning to validate through experimentation. You've likely explored these techniques, committed to practices, consumed teachings, and followed protocols. But despite all of this, you may still feel as if existence is something that happens around you, rather than something that arises from within you. You've hit milestones, fulfilled the expectations culture handed you, and worked towards spiritual progress, yet something persists, a feeling that an essential piece is missing. You might sense that you're performing in a narrative someone else wrote, following instructions that don't quite lead to the life you envision. This is not because you are malfunctioning, or damaged, or isolated in this experience. No, what you're sensing is entirely real, and here's why. The dimension you are navigating right now, the tangible, material dimension, is not the foundation of reality. It's a projected field, emanating from something far deeper, something infinitely more primary than physical substance. This understanding was accessible to ancient lineages long before science could measure it. They didn't just conceptualize this, they cultivated exact methodologies to engage with it. These masters learned to shift from passive witnesses to active creators of the reality they experienced. And here's where things get even more fascinating. What they uncovered was not vague spirituality. It wasn't abstract or elusive knowledge. It was a form of consciousness engineering, an exact science that modern quantum researchers like David Bohm and Carl Pribram would later corroborate through equations and empirical testing. Stay present with me, because by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why you felt constrained by your environment, why your intentions seem to push back from reality, and precisely how to transition from being a passive recipient of this projected field to its active originator. But before we get into that, we need to understand what they meant by projection. Ready to dive deeper? Let me share a moment that fundamentally shifted my understanding. I was in a research library, studying quantum theory, particularly David Bohm's propositions on the holographic architecture of reality. Simultaneously, I had a translation of the Upanishads beside me, and as I explored both texts, a powerful realization stopped me in my tracks. Bohm, who was mentored by Einstein and regarded as one of the greatest quantum theorists, articulated the nature of existence through two domains: the implicate domain, an unseen and folded dimension where all potential exists in superposition, and the explicate domain, the unfolded, materialized dimension of apparent objects and perceived separations that we register through our senses. If this resonates with you, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. By subscribing, you're supporting a space where we can explore these consciousness principles together. Here's what struck me deeply. The Upanishads, written over 25 centuries ago, describe existence through two dimensions as well. They call them Brahman, the eternal, unchanging, unified consciousness field, and Maya, the dimension of transient phenomena, the seemingly independent forms that are projections from that foundational unity. Different terminology, but an identical framework. This wasn't a random convergence, this was a fundamental truth about the nature of existence being confirmed across independent traditions. As I expanded my research, I found this same concept in Tibetan philosophical systems, in indigenous wisdom from Australia to the Americas, in Hermetic mysticism, and in Taoist cosmology. These weren't conflicting paradigms, they were independent confirmations of identical fundamental architecture about the structure of existence. The paradox is this: contemporary science, with its sophisticated instrumentation and mathematical proofs, only began to approximate what a practitioner meditating in an 1th century Tibetan cave already embodied, what Aboriginal wisdom carriers had transmitted for 40 millennia, what Hindu philosophers had encoded in the Vedas countless generations before the Common Era. These ancient traditions lacked particle accelerators or neuroimaging technology, yet they had unmediated access to the implicate domain through consciousness itself. And here's why this is directly relevant to you. These weren't abstract theorists contemplating philosophical concepts, they were active practitioners. They cultivated precise methodologies, contemplative technologies, perception-shifting protocols, and awareness techniques that allowed them to engage with existence at the implicate dimension. They didn't just talk about shifting reality, they demonstrated it. For instance, Tibetan master Milarepa could materialize sustenance and hydration in remote wilderness. Indigenous healers could dissolve disease by working with what they recognized as the interconnected web of existence. Hindu adepts demonstrated abilities that seemed to contradict physical laws, but only if you assume that the explicate domain constitutes all that exists. These masters weren't violating principles, they were operating from a deeper, more fundamental set of principles that most of us are unaware of. Now, imagine this. What if you could internalize these principles? What if you could access this same consciousness technology? That's precisely what we're going to illuminate today. But first, let's establish the foundation. We need to comprehend what they meant when they described existence as projection. Let's dive into the implicate domain. David Bohm discovered something that destabilized the very foundation of physics. He was examining electron dynamics in plasma ionized gas and found that the electrons weren't behaving as discrete particles, they were coordinating like parts of a larger, integrated system, unified by an invisible information matrix. Bohm called this undivided wholeness in movement, and rather than merely cataloging the observation, he posed a more fundamental question. What if the separation we perceive is the distortion? What if reality's true nature is unified, and the manifestation of discrete objects is just a derivative expression? Bohm formulated two orders of existence, the implicate order and the explicate order. The implicate order is like an ocean. Everything within the ocean is composed of water, and waves are simply temporary expressions of the ocean, rising and falling, but not separate from it. The explicate order, on the other hand, is the dimension of waves, the dimension where phenomena appear separate, differentiated, and autonomous. It's where you seem positioned here, and others seem positioned there, where boundaries appear absolute, and time appears to move in one direction. But here's the revelation. Bohm demonstrated mathematically that the explicate order is derivative. It emerges from something more fundamental. It's not the base layer. The implicate order is. And this is where it intersects with ancient understanding in a way that completely transforms our comprehension of existence. Hindu metaphysics describes this identical architecture. They designate the implicate order as Brahman, the unchanging, eternal unified consciousness field that underlies all manifestation. Everything that manifests is Brahman, temporarily expressing as something differentiated. The explicate order is Maya, not in the sense of illusion, as often mistranslated, but as the veiling and projecting capacity of consciousness. It's not that the dimension of separate objects doesn't exist. It's that it's an emanation from something more foundational and essential. Consider this analogy. Imagine a cinema screen. The images on the screen seem substantial. They move, interact, and appear to possess independent existence. But you know that these images are projections from an origin point, the film projector. The images on the screen are contingent upon the projector and the film, but they are not fundamentally real. This is Maya. This is the explicate order. Here's the practical implication for your experience. Most people are operating entirely within the projected dimension. They focus exclusively on the screen, attempting to manipulate the imagery in order to generate the outcomes they desire. They push, force, strive, trying to reorganize the explicate order from within itself. But here's where the masters understood something profound. They didn't manipulate the screen. They went straight to the projector, to the implicate order, where the images originate. And here's the most exciting part. You can do the same. By learning to connect with this deeper layer of existence, you can not only navigate life from a new perspective, but begin to generate and shape your own reality. Let's explore how to make that shift. Because once you access the implicate domain, you become the creator, not the created. And the universe, the entire field of existence, will begin to respond to you with an energy you've never experienced before. The authentic power isn't in manipulating the projection, it's in accessing the projector. When you work from the implicate dimension, when you engage with consciousness itself, rather than merely the objects consciousness is projecting, you're not attempting to force existence to transform. You're transforming the generative code that creates existence. This is why visualization works when it truly works. This is why focused intention can shift probabilities. This is why consciousness appears to influence materiality in quantum observations. You are not contradicting physical principles. Instead, you are operating from a dimension where those principles emerge from something even more primary, consciousness itself. But here's where many seekers encounter obstacles. They receive this information and assume, got it, so I just need to visualize more intensely, generate more optimistic cognitions, affirm my objectives more forcefully. This, however, is still operating from the explicate dimension. You're still using your conditioned surface consciousness to try to force transformation. What the ancients transmitted was far more refined, far more potent. Tibetan philosophy speaks of the void, of the implicate order, as the origin point of all manifestation in boundless flux. They state that only the void is ultimately substantial. The formations in the explicate order, what we perceive as the material world, are ephemeral. But here's the paradox that Western consciousness often bypasses. Despite its ephemeral nature, the non-void still encompasses an infinitely vast multiplicity of dimensional expressions. It's not that the physical dimension is meaningless, it's just that it's not ultimate. It's not foundational. When you integrate this understanding, not just intellectually but experientially, everything reconfigures. You realize that you're not a separate self attempting to acquire something from the world outside of you. You are consciousness at the implicate dimension, projecting into the explicate dimension. You are not attempting to obtain something. You are recognizing that you are the origin of everything. Shall we dive even deeper? Let me share something that required years for me to genuinely comprehend. When Hindu philosophy speaks of the dimension as Maya, most Western consciousness interprets this as the dimension being fabricated, like we're existing in a simulation, and none of this carries significance. But that is not what the ancient teachings were transmitting, not even close. Here's the authentic teaching, and it's far more sophisticated and applicable than the simplified versions we often hear. Maya operates through two mechanisms, veiling and projecting. Let me break this down because it's essential to understand. The veiling capacity means that consciousness, which is intrinsically unified, appears to become fragmented. The infinite appears constrained. The eternal seems temporary. The singular appears as multiplicity. But here's the recognition. This veiling isn't malevolent. It's not a punishment or retribution. It's more analogous to consciousness engaging in concealment with itself. The universe is exploring what it feels like to forget its unity and experience separation. This is the very mechanism of creation. The projecting capacity is what generates the entire manifest dimension, every particle, every celestial body, every cognition, every sensation. All of it is consciousness projecting itself into various configurations. But here's what remains unacknowledged. You are simultaneously the consciousness generating the projection and the projection itself. Think about your dream states for a moment. When you dream, you generate an entire dimension. You populate it with entities, locations, narratives. Those dream entities seem autonomous. They seem to possess independent will. But upon awakening, you recognize that all of it was your consciousness projecting itself into transient configurations. The ancient masters are telling us that waking experience is identical to dreaming, just a more stabilized, persistent, and collectively coordinated dream. But here's where it becomes actionable. Most people are completely identified with the projection. They believe they are the character in the dream. They have forgotten they are the dreamer. And when you identify with the projection, you are constrained by all the limitations of Maya. You believe you are separate. You believe you are powerless. You believe existence is something happening to you. This is the conditioned consciousness. The Tibetan masters articulated it precisely when they said, "The unconscious consciousness is too conditioned in its perceptions to recognize the threshold between mind and matter. It cannot perceive the frequency domain where mind and matter are unified." Zen philosophy has another way of explaining this. They discuss how we confuse reality's indivisible nature with the conceptual compartments of language. We use words to fragment reality into categories: self versus other, internal versus external, mind versus matter, desirable versus undesirable. But reality itself does not contain those fragmentations. Those are imposed overlays. They are Maya's veiling mechanism, generating the appearance of separation where none exists. And here's what this translates to for your present experience. That sensation of being constrained, of trying to manifest something, but it continuously failing to materialize, of experiencing existence as resistant to your intentions. It's not that you are inadequate at manifestation. It's not that the universe opposes you. It's not that you're afflicted or undeserving. It's that you're attempting to manifest from within the veil. You're using conditioned conceptual consciousness, the consciousness that believes in separation, to attempt to generate unity, connection, coherence. It's like trying to measure something accurately using a warped measuring instrument. The instrument itself is distorted by the veil of Maya. So, what's the resolution? The ancient lineages all point to the identical practice, though they use different terminology. Hindus speak of seeing through Maya. Buddhists speak of perfect seeing and contemplation. Indigenous wisdom keepers speak of remembering the dream time. But they're all describing the same transition. Relocating your identity from the projection back to the projector, from the wave back to the ocean, from the character in the dream back to the dreamer. And here's what's revolutionary about this recognition. You don't need to travel anywhere. You don't need to become something you're not. You don't need to acquire any special capacities or knowledge from external sources. The truth that has been concealed in plain sight is this: you are already the projector. You are already consciousness at the implicate dimension. You are already the ocean pretending to be a wave. The work isn't to become awakened. The work is to remember what you have always been. You are already the consciousness that generates the entire dimension, including the projection. This isn't a future event, it's already happening right now. It's a matter of recognizing your true nature. You may be wondering, okay, understood, but how do I actually accomplish this? How do I see through the veil? And that's precisely what we're going to explore next. But first, we need to integrate another element of the framework that makes this all crystallize. We need to discuss interconnection, what indigenous wisdom keepers refer to as the web, and what quantum physics designates as non-locality. Here's what transforms everything. You're not merely consciousness projecting a dimension. Your consciousness is interconnected to all other consciousness in a web so intimate that the fragment literally is the totality. Let me demonstrate what I mean. Imagine an infinite web extending in all directions. At every intersection of this web, there's a multifaceted jewel. Each jewel reflects all the other jewels in the net. So, when you look into any singular jewel, you perceive the reflection of every other jewel. And in each of those reflections, you perceive the reflection of all the other jewels, infinitely and perpetually. Each fragment contains the totality. Each point reflects all other points. Now, this is not metaphorical language. This isn't mystical symbolism. This is a precise articulation of reality's holographic architecture. Carl Pribram, a neuroscientist at Stanford, made a remarkable discovery in his work on memory and neural function. He found that memories aren't stored in discrete locations within neural tissue. They're distributed throughout the neural tissue holographically. This understanding is key. Every fragment of reality is connected to every other fragment. You are not separate from the field, you are the field. And when you realize this, everything shifts. This is the ultimate teaching, the realization that you are both the projector and the projection, that you are the consciousness generating the field of experience. This understanding is transformative. It's the key to accessing a deeper level of consciousness and manifesting your reality from the true source, the implicate order. You can remove substantial portions of neural tissue, and yet memories do not vanish. Instead, they become less precise, less detailed, because each segment of neural tissue contains information about the totality of the self, just like each jewel in Indra's net. This is a key insight that David Bohm, a groundbreaking quantum physicist, expanded upon further. He proposed that the entire universe operates holographically. Every region of space contains information about the entire universe. The fragment is, quite literally, the totality folded into a more compact space. And here's something profound that often gets overlooked. When Bohm developed his holographic theory, he wasn't merely theorizing abstractly, he was observing plasma behaviors that defied conventional understanding. The electrons in plasma would organize themselves into coherent patterns that seemed to possess their own intelligence, their own knowing. They would avoid obstacles collectively, moving as unified fields. It was as though they were all accessing the same information simultaneously, not through signals traveling between them, but through direct access to a shared implicate field. This same phenomenon can be observed in nature. For example, consider the synchronized movements of birds in murmuration or schools of fish darting through the water as a singular organism. They don't follow a leader, and they don't calculate trajectories. Instead, they access the implicate field, where all positions, all movements, all trajectories exist simultaneously as unified information. What's remarkable is that indigenous wisdom keepers, with no knowledge of neuroscience or quantum theory, recognized this long before Bohm's discoveries. Millennia ago, Black Elk, a Lakota holy person, had a vision. In this vision, he was transported to Harney Peak in the Black Hills, where he was told that this peak was the center of existence. But here's the important realization he had later. Anywhere is the center of existence. Let that sink in for a moment. This idea echoes the words of the ancient Greek philosopher Empedocles, who said, "God is a circle whose center is everywhere and whose circumference is nowhere." Similarly, the Hermetic tradition teaches, "As above, so below." What is true at the largest scale is also true at the smallest scale. The Hindu text, the Vishvasara Tantra, articulates it even more directly. What is here is elsewhere. What is not here is nowhere. These various cultures, across different epochs and geographies, have all recognized this identical truth. And here's the practical, immediate translation for your life. You are not a tiny, separated fragment of consciousness, disconnected from the totality. You are the center of the web. From your point of consciousness, the entire universe unfolds. Every thread in this vast web connects to you, touches you, interpenetrates you. This is why indigenous healers could perceive themselves at the center of the web and, from that position, influence healing across distances, affect atmospheric conditions, and communicate with non-human consciousness. They weren't contradicting natural principles, they were operating from a far more profound understanding of those principles. The principle of interconnection. The principle that the fragment is the totality. This is why synchronicity manifests in your life. Why you think about someone, and they make contact with you. Why you require something, and it appears. Why you shift your internal configuration, and external circumstances change to correspond. It's not that you're manifesting from a place of separation. Instead, you are the web. When you shift, the entire web shifts, because you are not separate from it. But here's where most consciousness encounters obstacles, and this is crucial. People receive this teaching, and their conditioned consciousness attempts to possess it, to own it, to utilize it for individualistic gain. Excellent, they think. So, I'm the center of the universe. That means I can acquire whatever I desire. But that's still operating from separation. That's still the ego, the false sense of an isolated self attempting to manipulate existence for its own benefit. What the masters truly understood, and what transforms everything, is this. When you genuinely perceive yourself at the center of the web, you simultaneously perceive that everyone else is at the center of the web. Every point is the center. Every consciousness is the totality. This isn't about ego inflation. It's about ego dissolution into the recognition of radical unity. The Aboriginal peoples of Australia teach that authentic consciousness doesn't reside in the physical body. It exists in what they call the dream time, the transcendent dimension that underlies and permeates the physical dimension. They articulate that underlying all visible configurations, there exists a vital essence from which everything emerges. That vital essence is shared by all consciousness, a universal singularity. When you interface with that vital essence, when you descend below the dimension of conceptual cognition and conditioned consciousness, something extraordinary happens. You stop attempting to manifest from need, from scarcity, from the belief that you are separate from what you desire. You stop approaching life as if it is something you must strive for from a place of lack. Pause for a moment. Have you ever experienced a glimpse of this? A moment when the separation dissolved, and something appeared effortlessly, as if it were always there waiting for you? If so, drop a comment sharing that experience. Your story could be the catalyst someone else needs to recognize their own capacity to manifest. Instead of perceiving yourself as separate, you recognize that you and the thing you desire are both waves in the identical ocean, both projections from the same source. In that recognition, the separation dissolves. The resistance dissolves. The manifestation doesn't occur because you forced it. It occurs because you remembered the unity that was always present. And here's something else that becomes clear when you operate from this recognition. The universe isn't responding to your desires. The universe is your desire expressing itself. There's no gap between the one who desires and the thing desired. There's no distance between the seeker and the sought. The search itself is the finding disguised as separation. This is why trying harder never works. This is why forcing outcomes creates more resistance. Trying implies separation. Forcing implies that you are here, and the outcome is over there, distant from you. But when you recognize that you are the projector, you understand that the outcome is already within you, already part of the unified field, already present in the implicate dimension, waiting to unfold into the explicate. And if what we're discussing here is landing for you as recognition, if you feel a deeper understanding arising within you, then you're beginning to perceive just how radically different this understanding is from conventional manifestation methodologies. This is not about forcing things into being from a place of lack or separation. It's about realizing that everything is already here, that you are the origin, and that the universe reflects back what you have always been. Now, let's descend even deeper. To fully integrate this, we need to explore interconnection further. This is where indigenous wisdom and quantum physics intersect in a way that transforms everything. You are not just consciousness projecting a dimension. Your consciousness is interconnected with all other consciousness. This web is so intimate that the fragment literally is the totality. To understand this, consider the ancient teaching of Indra's net, a symbol of infinite interconnectedness. Visualize an infinite web extending in all directions. At every intersection of this web, there's a multifaceted jewel. Each jewel reflects all the other jewels in the net. So, when you look into any singular jewel, you perceive the reflection of every other jewel. And in each of those reflections, you see every other jewel reflected, infinitely and perpetually. Each fragment contains the totality. Every point reflects all other points. This is not metaphorical language. This is a precise articulation of reality's holographic architecture. Carl Pribram, a neuroscientist at Stanford, discovered that memories aren't stored in discrete locations within the brain. They are distributed throughout the neural tissue holographically. The hologram is in each part. Similarly, the universe is a holographic projection where every part reflects the whole. And here's the key takeaway: you are the totality. You are the jewel in Indra's net. You are simultaneously both the reflection and the reflector, the source and the expression. When you awaken to this interconnected truth, the limitations imposed by Maya dissolve, and you recognize your true nature not as a separate, isolated self, but as part of an infinite, unified consciousness. In this awareness, you no longer feel the need to force or struggle. The manifestation of your desires becomes effortless because you have reconnected with the source. You realize that you are not seeking from a place of lack, but expressing from a place of wholeness. This is the truth of interconnectedness, of the implicate order, and of your true nature. The work isn't about acquiring something you don't already have. It's about remembering who you truly are. And in that remembering, everything falls into place. The unconscious mind, often referred to as the conditioned consciousness, contains deeply ingrained patterns that are buried so profoundly that you might not even perceive them operating. These patterns include the beliefs you absorbed before you even learned to speak, the traumas encoded in your nervous system, and the cultural programming running automatically in the background. As the great Tibetan master Milera once articulated, the unconscious mind is too conditioned to recognize the boundary between mind and matter. This is where everything begins to shift. The dimension of existence at the implicate or quantum level does not have a rigid boundary between mind and matter. They interpenetrate each other. They are aspects of the same unified field. But the unconscious mind, conditioned by societal structures and individual experiences, perceives a clear separation, separating the mind from the material world. What does this mean? It means that while you may consciously affirm something like, "I am abundant, resources flow to me effortlessly," if there's an unconscious belief that resources are scarce, that wealth is corrupt, or that you don't deserve prosperity, guess which belief is ultimately running the show? It's the unconscious belief, because it operates in the implicate domain, the dimension where the projection of your reality is generated. In simpler terms, the conscious mind is operating in the explicate dimension, the dimension of the projected, physical world, and attempting to rearrange things. But meanwhile, the unconscious mind is drafting the blueprint of the entire structure. This is why conventional manifestation methods often fail. They attempt to override deep unconscious conditioning with surface-level conscious intention. It's like trying to navigate a ship by repainting its exterior, while the true course of the ship is being dictated by the unseen forces below deck. Now, let's make this even more complex. The unconscious doesn't only hold individual conditioning, it also carries collective conditioning, ancestral patterns, cultural beliefs that have been transmitted through generations, archetypal structures that Carl Jung identified as being part of the collective unconscious. Your personal unconscious is not just your own, it is interconnected with the collective unconscious of all humanity. When you are attempting to manifest abundance, for instance, you are not only working with your own personal beliefs about money and resources, you are simultaneously interfacing with thousands of years of collective beliefs about scarcity, survival, worthiness, power, and resource distribution. This is why some manifestations feel easy, while others feel impossible. The ones that manifest effortlessly align with both your personal conditioning and the collective conditioning. On the other hand, the impossible ones often clash with deep ancestral or collective patterns. However, here's the remarkable part. Because you are the center of the web, because the fragment contains the totality, when you shift your personal unconscious patterns, you are simultaneously shifting the collective field. Your personal transformation ripples out and influences the entire web of consciousness. Zen philosophy also recognizes this. They warn against the danger of confusing reality's indivisible nature with conceptual compartments, categories we use to fragment reality through language. Words, while helpful for communication, create conceptual divisions that reality itself doesn't contain. When you label something as desirable or undesirable, you generate a separation that isn't inherently part of reality. In doing so, you reinforce the belief in scarcity. Take this example. When you say, "I desire this," you're creating a separation between yourself and the thing you desire. The act of desiring reinforces the idea that you are separate from your desire. And the more you desire, the more you reinforce the feeling that something is lacking. The unconscious absorbs all of this, your desires, your attempts, your effort, and manifests a reality based on those unconscious beliefs. This creates an exhausting cycle: desiring, attempting, failing, desiring more intensely, attempting more intensely, failing more intensely, all while the unconscious mind faithfully generates an existence that corresponds with its deeply held conditioning. But here's where the profound shift can occur. It's not your fault. You didn't consciously select most of your conditioning. It was absorbed from your early childhood, from your parents, your culture, and from the collective human experience. The Lakota medicine person Lame Deer beautifully and tragically articulated this when he said that contemporary human beings have forgotten the secret knowledge embedded in their physical bodies, their sensory apparatus, and their dream states. They no longer use their neural capacities effectively and have forgotten the ancient wisdom that the spirit has imbued within them. Instead, they stumble blindly along a road to nowhere, a road that they themselves bulldoze, paving it smoothly so that they can travel faster to the void that waits at the end, ready to consume them. This is the conditioned consciousness at work, creating progress that leads to emptiness. But here's the radical shift. The moment you perceive the conditioning, it begins to lose its power over you. The moment you recognize the unconscious patterns that have been running your life, they begin to dissolve. This is what the Hindus refer to as seeing through Maya. This is what Buddhists call perfect seeing and contemplation. It's not about acquiring new knowledge. It's about perceiving reality directly, without the filter of concepts, without the veil of language, into the nature of your own consciousness. And when you perceive it, truly perceive how the conditioned unconscious has been generating your existence, something extraordinary happens. You stop struggling with life. You stop forcing transformation. You stop white-knuckling your way through manifestation techniques. You stop trying to manipulate the universe into yielding your desires. Instead, you begin healing, deconditioning, and returning to the natural state of consciousness that existed before all the programming took place. The Aboriginal peoples call this returning to the dream time. The Hindus call it recognizing Brahman. The Buddhists speak of awakening to your Buddha nature. But they are all describing the same thing, remembering what you were before you forgot, returning to the origin, coming home to the implicate order. And from that position, everything shifts. Not because you're forcing it, but because the generative code that creates your existence has transformed. You no longer need to fight or strive because you are no longer trying to change the projection. You are shifting the projector. The universe reflects what you truly are, your inner state, your beliefs, your consciousness, and when you change those, everything around you changes as well. But let's pause here for a moment. What unconscious patterns are running your life right now? What beliefs do you hold about yourself, about the world, about what's possible? What beliefs are so deeply embedded that you don't even perceive them as beliefs anymore? You simply accept them as truth. These are the patterns generating your reality, and if you want to change the hologram, you must first change the projector. Let's explore this further. If you feel the recognition stirring within you, if you sense that something is shifting, know that you have the power to change these unconscious patterns, and in doing so, you will change the way you experience reality. The transformation begins the moment you choose to wake up to your own inner power, to become aware of the projections and beliefs that are unconsciously shaping your world. So, take a moment now to reflect. What patterns are you becoming aware of today? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because sometimes naming the pattern is the first step to dissolving it. Through awareness, healing begins, and through healing, the power to shape your reality returns to you. This is the work of conscious creation, and it starts with you recognizing that you are not the projection, you are the projector. If you've stayed present through this exploration, you're ready for the complete framework of understanding. Now, let's dive deeper into the reality we inhabit. Here's the realization we must embrace. Existence functions through two orders: the implicate, which is the unified field of consciousness from which everything emerges, and the explicate, the projected dimension of separate forms. You are not a separate self existing in the explicate order, trying to manifest things from outside yourself. In reality, you are consciousness at the implicate level, projecting into the explicate dimension. You are the ocean, temporarily pretending to be a wave. Everything you perceive, touch, and experience is part of Maya. This does not mean it is fabricated or meaningless, but it is not ultimate. It is a hologram, not the origin. And this hologram operates on the principle of radical interconnection. You are the center of the web, but so is everyone else. Every point contains the totality. The fragment is the totality. This is why transforming your consciousness transforms your entire existence, not through mystical thinking, but because consciousness is the origin of all existence. When you shift the implicate order, the explicate dimension responds accordingly. But here's where things often get tricky. Most of your manifestation doesn't arise from your conscious mind. It comes from the unconscious, from deeply ingrained patterns so automatic that you don't even perceive them operating. It's like trying to drive a car while someone else is controlling the navigation. The conscious mind believes it is in charge, but in reality, the unconscious mind is generating your existence. The key question all wisdom traditions point to is this: how do you access the implicate dimension directly? How do you transition from being trapped in unconscious conditioning to becoming a conscious generator of your reality? The answer is simpler and more profound than you may think. You stop attempting. Yes, it sounds paradoxical, but stay with me. Every effort, every striving, every attempt to force existence into a different shape, all of that is coming from the conditioned consciousness, the part of you that believes in separation, that sees you here and your desires over there. The Tao Te Ching captures this beautifully. The master does nothing, yet leaves nothing incomplete. This isn't about passivity. This isn't about surrender in the traditional sense. This is about relinquishing the illusion of the separate self, the part of you that tries to control existence, and instead aligning with the flow of the implicate order itself. The indigenous healers understood this. They didn't try to force healing. They aligned with the web of connection and allowed the healing to flow through them. The masters of various spiritual traditions understood this as well. They didn't force awakening. They relaxed into the recognition of what was already true. The mystics from every lineage expressed this in terms like surrender, alignment, flow, releasing, and allowing the divine to guide them. But here's the transformative understanding. This isn't about becoming passive. It's about becoming responsive rather than reactive. It's about moving from the center of consciousness instead of from fear. It's about generating from a place of wholeness instead of from scarcity. When you achieve this, manifestation doesn't feel like something you're forcing. It becomes a natural unfolding, elegant and precise, because you're no longer trying to manipulate the hologram. Instead, you remember that you are the hologram. You remember that you are the dreamer, not simply the dream. And from that position, everything becomes possible. However, there's something important to understand about this transition. It's not instantaneous for most people. It's not a single moment of awakening where everything clicks into place, and suddenly you're permanently established in the recognition of yourself as the projector. For most people, it's a gradual unfolding, a series of realizations. There are moments where the veil thins and you catch a glimpse of the truth, followed by moments where the veil descends again and you forget. This is a natural part of the process. The conditioned consciousness has immense momentum. It has been operating for decades, or perhaps lifetimes. It doesn't dissolve overnight. What matters is that each time you catch a glimpse, each time you remember, even for a brief moment, that you are the projector, not the projection. That recognition deepens. It creates a groove in your consciousness, making the next remembrance easier, more accessible, and more stable. Think of it like learning to lucid dream. The first time you recognize that you are dreaming while in a dream, it's a startling experience. The recognition often wakes you up, but with practice, you can maintain that recognition for longer periods. You can navigate the dream consciously while remaining aware that you are dreaming. Eventually, that awareness becomes natural, effortless, continuous. The same process occurs with waking consciousness. The first recognition that you're the projector might be brief, unstable. You might quickly slip back into identification with the projection. But each recognition strengthens your ability to remain in that truth. Each time you remember, the forgetting becomes less complete. Eventually, you'll be established in the recognition more often than you're lost in the forgetting. Now, let's take this to a deeper level. Are you ready for the final revelation? Allow me to transmit to you what you truly are, not as a concept, but as an actuality. You are not a biological accident stumbling through a meaningless universe, hoping to get lucky. You are not merely attempting to acquire fragments of existence through sheer effort, optimism, or visualizing your desires. That narrative, that's the veil. That's Maya's ultimate deception. making consciousness forget itself and believe that it's a separate, powerless fragment. What you actually are is this. You are consciousness itself, having a temporary human experience. You are the implicate order, projecting into the explicate. You are the ocean, engaging in being a wave. You are the dreamer, dreaming the dream. From your point of awareness, from your center of consciousness, the entire universe unfolds. Not because you are exceptional, but because every point is the center. Every consciousness is the totality. The ancient wisdom lineages recognized this truth, and quantum physics is beginning to validate it. Deep inside you, beneath the conditioning, beneath the concepts, beneath the fear, you have always recognized this too. That sensation, that feeling that there's something more, something foundational, something you've forgotten, is not a longing for something you need to acquire. It's the memory of what you've always been, calling you home. So here's my invitation to you, not as a command, not as an obligation, but as an invitation. Stop struggling with existence. Stop attempting to force the hologram to be different. Instead, descend deeper beneath the cognition, beneath the conditioning, beneath the conceptual consciousness that fragments reality into pieces. Descend to the implicate order, to the dream time, to the origin, the vital essence from which all configurations emerge. From that position of unity, wholeness, and infinite potential, allow your existence to unfold not because you're forcing it, but because you remember who you are. You are not separate from the universe. You are the universe, recognizing itself through the unique perspective of your consciousness. And that recognition transforms everything. Now, here's where it becomes even more extraordinary. What we've explored today, the implicate order, the projection, the web of connection, there's a direct experiential practice for this. It's a practice so elegant and immediate that when you engage with it, you'll understand why contemporary physicists are only now beginning to approximate what the ancients have already embodied. This practice has been refined over millennia, and it's available to you now. I invite you into that direct experience not as theory, but as lived recognition. If this transmission has touched something in you, if you feel a spark of remembering rather than learning, then I invite you to subscribe not just to this channel, but to this frequency, to this space of consciousness exploration. Because the more of us who embody this recognition, the more existence reflects that actuality. Take a moment right now and comment below with this phrase, "I am the projector." Not as an affirmation, but as an energetic declaration, as a conscious interruption in the loop, as a signal to the quantum field that you are choosing to remember. If something resonated with you, drop one word in the comments that captures the transformation you're choosing right now. If you've stayed with me this far, you're on the brink of the full understanding, the complete framework. Here's what we now recognize. Existence operates through two realms, the implicate and explicate. The implicate is the unified field of consciousness, the source from which everything emerges. The explicate is the projected dimension of separate forms, of the reality we experience through our senses. Now, here's the truth you must grasp. You are not a separate self, existing in the explicate, trying to manipulate your circumstances from the outside. You are consciousness itself, projecting into the explicate. You are the ocean, momentarily appearing as a wave. The world around you, everything you perceive, is part of Maya, the illusion. Maya is not meaningless or fabricated, it is simply not ultimate. It is not the foundational truth. It's the hologram that arises from the implicate, the unified field. And this hologram operates on the principle of radical interconnection. You are the center of the web, and so is everyone else. Every point, every fragment, is the totality. The reason transforming your consciousness transforms your entire existence is because consciousness is the origin of all reality. When you shift the implicate order, the explicate dimension responds accordingly. However, most of your manifestation efforts don't arise from your conscious mind. They arise from your unconscious mind patterns, so deep and automatic that you don't even perceive them operating. It's like you're trying to drive a car, but someone else is controlling the steering wheel. Your conscious mind assumes it's in control, but the unconscious mind is actually generating your experience. Here's where it gets crucial. The key to change is not found in trying to force or manipulate things externally. The key is understanding and aligning with the implicate dimension, the source. But how do you access this dimension? How do you transition from being trapped in unconscious conditioning to becoming a conscious generator of your own reality? The answer is surprisingly simple, and it might sound paradoxical. Stop attempting. Every effort, every act of striving, every attempt to make existence bend to your will is rooted in the conditioned consciousness, the part of you that believes in separation. The Tao Te Ching says, "The master does nothing, yet leaves nothing incomplete." This isn't about passivity or surrender. It's about releasing the illusion of a separate self, trying to control existence, and instead aligning with the flow of the implicate order itself. The indigenous healers, the great spiritual masters, and the mystics of every tradition understood this deeply. They didn't force healing. They aligned with the web of connection and allowed the healing to flow through them. They didn't strain to achieve awakening. They relaxed into the recognition of what was already true. This recognition is about alignment, flow, and surrender, not the passive surrender of giving up, but the active surrender of letting go of the illusion of separation. When you align with the implicate order, manifestation doesn't require force or manipulation. It unfolds naturally and elegantly. But to reach this place, you must stop trying to manipulate the hologram and remember that you are the hologram. You are the dreamer, not simply the dream. When you remember this, everything becomes possible. But let me be clear, this transition isn't instant for most people. It's not a single moment of realization where everything clicks into place. For most of us, it's a gradual unfolding. There are moments when the veil thins and you glimpse the truth. Then, just as quickly, the veil descends again and you forget. This is all part of the process. The conditioned consciousness has a lot of momentum. It has been operating for decades, even lifetimes. It doesn't dissolve overnight. What matters is that each time you remember, even if just for a brief moment, that you are the projector and not the projection, that recognition deepens. It creates a groove in your consciousness that makes the next remembering easier, more stable, and more accessible. Think of it like learning to lucid dream. The first time you realize you're dreaming while in the dream, it's a startling experience. That recognition often wakes you up, but with practice, you can maintain that awareness. Over time, you can navigate the dream consciously while remaining aware that you're dreaming. Eventually, it becomes natural, effortless, and continuous. This same process occurs in waking consciousness. The first time you remember that you're the projector may be brief and unstable. You might slip back into identification with the projection quickly, but each time you remember, the capacity to stay in that recognition strengthens. Eventually, the remembering becomes more consistent than the forgetting. Now, let me take this even deeper. Are you ready for the final shift? Let me share what you truly are, not as a concept, but as an actuality. You are not a biological accident, stumbling through a random universe, hoping to get lucky. You are not someone simply trying to acquire fragments of reality by visualizing, wishing, or attempting to make things happen. That narrative is the veil. That's the ultimate deception of Maya, making you forget that you are not a separate, powerless fragment. What you truly are is consciousness itself, having a temporary human experience. You are the implicate order, projecting into the explicate. You are the ocean pretending to be a wave. You are the dreamer dreaming the dream. From your point of awareness, the entire universe unfolds not because you're exceptional, but because every point is the center. Every consciousness is the totality. The ancient wisdom lineages knew this, and quantum physics is validating it today. Deep within you, beneath all the conditioning, the fear, the concepts, you've always known this. That sensation you've carried your whole life, that feeling that something more exists, something foundational that you've forgotten, that's not a longing for something you need to acquire. It's the memory of what you've always been, calling you home. Here's my invitation to you. Stop struggling with existence. Stop trying to force the hologram to be different. Instead, descend deeper beneath the concepts, the conditioning, the belief in separation, and connect with the implicate order, the origin. From that place of unity, wholeness, and infinite potential, allow your existence to unfold naturally, not because you're forcing it, but because you remember who you truly are. You are not separate from the universe. You are the universe, recognizing itself through your unique perspective. This realization transforms everything. Now, here's where it becomes even more extraordinary. Everything we've discussed, the implicate order, the projection, the web of connection, there is a direct, experiential practice for this. It's a practice so simple, so elegant, that when you engage with it, you'll see why modern science is only now beginning to approximate what the ancients have already embodied. This practice has been refined over millennia and is available to you right now. I invite you to experience it not as a theory, but as a direct recognition. If this transmission has resonated with something deep inside of you, if you feel a spark of remembering rather than just learning, then I invite you to subscribe not just to this channel, but to this frequency, to this space of consciousness exploration. The more of us who embody this recognition, the more existence reflects this truth. Take a moment and comment below with this phrase, "I am the projector," not as an affirmation, but as an energetic declaration. This is a conscious interruption in the loop, a signal to the quantum field that you are choosing to remember. If something resonated with you, drop one word in the comments that captures the transformation you're choosing right now. This is the first step in remembering who you truly are.